generally valid as far as our approach to progressive Islam is concerned. For instance, if you look at the situation in Africa, our history in relation to human rights has been one of erosion and violation. And Josephine this morning mentioned the fact that our Christian women need to be protected. In fact, I understand that as saying we need to advance the rights of the women as well. And I think that we really need to kind of consider progressive Islam as a viable partner in our search for a universal standard of human rights on the continent of Africa.
Thank you. Just to add what Nicole is saying, that the basis of Islam is simply to say that Islam is not monolithic.
Yes.
There is not just one single big Islam. And Muslims themselves have said that. One of the persons that Nicole quoted, Ibrahim Musa, he has said that there is no Muslim in general. Muslims are always in specific context. There's always people are Muslim in context, and that Muslims have disagreed, and it's true, since the time of the Prophet of Islam. Immediately Muhammad died, there were disagreements, and they started fighting each other. So he said Islam has never been one, it's just a myth, and that there have been divergent views of Islam. And also, it is also important to say that somebody like Mahmoud Taha that Nicole referred to is an African Muslim. And what they are trying to do is to say that, look, in Africa, we cannot go with this traditional way of interpreting the Quran. We cannot do that. And he said that Sudan cannot live with that. And of course, he paid with his life. Does that mean that Josiah was talking yesterday? He said even within the Christian church, he has received threats from Christians to his life.
Yes.
Some people have to stand up, to even within the community, to challenge these things. And sometimes you have to pay a price for it. And these Muslims are paying that price. It doesn't mean that we cannot take them seriously. We've got to take them seriously, because that's their faith. And that's their tradition.
It's amazing that when Zapiro's cartoon was published in the Mail and Guardian newspaper, there were lots of letters to the editor. And many of the very antagonistic and aggressive letters came from the Christian camp, condemning Zapiro.
Yeah.
And for me, that was really very puzzling. Do we support freedom of expression or not? So I think that sometimes, we as Christians as well, we can fall again, that we can nurture this fear of Islam, but at the same time, we can also have the dhimmi mentality, where we become, vehicles of, the Islamic fundamentalism. Yeah. And concerning that, the different faces of Islam, it is only the Islamists who are maintaining that there is only one face of Islam, pure Islam. Yeah.
Namely their own face.
Their own face, exactly.
Oh, we used to say there's only one church of God, there's only one true church of God, and that's the one in Rome. We used to say so. We used to say so. And we felt very comfortable with that. Everybody else is a heretic. That is the reality on the ground today, and I believe you didn't start at 10, so we are going to, you will finish at 10 past hour. So we want another round of questions. Questions, comments. 1, 2, 3. 3. The man from Sudan is going to defend 4. Will defend Taha for us. 4 man. Got himself.
I just want if you clarify just this one. The topic you put there is progressive Islam. When you talk about progressive Islam, what immediately comes to mind is that there is retrogressive Islam, or there is Islam that is stagnant and therefore not progressive. The question is, do you use progressive Islam as those who are progressive Muslims call themselves, or is it by their attitude that we are allocating to them a label which they do not say of themselves?
Thank you. Number 2.
it seems that most progressive Muslims have had some association with the West, especially Western education or visits or refuge. And this has kind of tainted them in the eyes of non-progressive Muslims, saying, okay, you've gone to the other side. How can progressive Muslims rid themselves of this taint? And could perhaps Africa be part of the answer, where progressive Muslims in Africa who have more ability to say, could that be part of the answer?
Thank you. Next.
Yes. We have terms engagement, tolerance, and dialogue. And it seems in the presentation that our sister preferred to use engagement instead of tolerance. Could you please clarify this term?
Brother Matthew.
I imagine that people like Farid would have come from the ANC radical tradition, movement against apartheid, which tended to collapse and create a wall of all the disaffected people in the world. How much of that, in a way, how has Islam responded to the contradictions of post-apartheid South Africa? Because I guess this what you're saying would have taken place within a particular context.
Thank you. Oh, Justin wants to ask you a question. That should be the last one.
Thanks so much for your presentation. My question is that you mentioned big people, in terms of scholarly work in Islam, those who are followers of peace. You've mentioned those big people. And you said most of them live in the West. Did I hear you well? Did I hear you well? You
Yes.
said most of them are in the West. Okay, I'm just wondering the percentage of those people. Probably you said and escaped my mind. The other thing is, I just want to know the percentage of these followers of progressive Islam. And also the other question is, since we hear that Islam is really growing in the West, is this the kind of Islam that is growing in the West?
Thank you. Nicole.
Thank you. Concerning the label progressive Islam, that is not my own choice. I really, in this presentation, I went back to the Islamic sources, and as I explained in my introduction, that was the choice of the Muslims themselves. They describe themselves as progressive, and of course, we dealt briefly, with debates about definitions. Even somebody like Omid Safi, who calls himself progressive, says that there is a problem in this term because it connotes arrogance or elitism or hypocrisy. And you yourself kind of implied to that when you said, does that mean that all the other Muslims are retrogressive? Yeah. But they said that because there's no better word to describe themselves, then they chose that label. So that was not my own description. I, as a scholar, just went back to Islamic sources and looked at how they see themselves. Concerning the association with the West, it's true that they have been tainted because, in fact, and the traditional Orthodox Muslims are saying, or all the Islamists are saying, if you are just instruments of the West to destroy pure Islam. And that is why they are really trying to reappropriate their traditions. And that's why they're trying, as Naim said, to kind of really reform Islam from inside their foundations. How can they get rid of that